Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you my slideshow. Today, we're talking about cyberpunk edge runners and my tragic hero, David Martinez. Uh, no, the slideshow won't cut it. I think I could do better. Watch this. Oh, much better. Now, where were we? Oh, right, I remember. The year is 2076. Mega corporations have risen. Legitimacy will bring you nowhere, so the only path is the corporation or the rebel path. Crime is rampant throughout Night City, and it's time for you to choose how you will be remembered. Today, I will tell you about David Martinez, the boy who went too far. Before we start, let me tell you that this series is a definite must-watch. I absolutely love this series, and I highly recommend you give it a watch too. If you haven't seen it yet, please watch it after this. I'm going to be covering major story and plot points, so I'm saying this is your spoiler warning. So now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start with a synopsis of the story, so you're caught up. The series starts off with David Martinez, our protagonist, reliving a video of a cyber psycho incident. For clarification, this is a near future where cybernetics are very common amongst everyone, criminals and law enforcement, giving people access to abilities that far surpass human limitations. But eventually, these enhancements got too advanced. Eventually, the mind can't handle these, so it causes damage to the mind, putting people into a state of psychosis, which can involve hallucinations, lack of sleep, and much, much worse fates. Now, after reliving those events, David quickly learned he lives with his mother. They're both poor, struggling to get by, but he's successful in school by academic standards. But due to a random act of misfortune and just living in Night City, his mother would be killed Swiss cheese style by a gang drive-by. Soon, after searching his mother's jacket, he finds a military-grade cybernetic and would have it implanted despite the protest of his doctor. After getting his new implant, a implant that would increase reaction time several times than normally allowed, military-grade, he would assault his peer that bullied him at the academy and drop out due to being unable to financially support his education. He would find a woman who quickly gets his interest on a train ride, Lucy. From this point on, she would act as the love interest for David. After one virtual date on the moon, he would be rudely brought back to reality by her gang members. Turns out, the implant that David owns, which will be from his point called the Sandevistan, was originally meant to go to the figurehead of the gang, Maine. However, after plenty of bargaining and pleading, David would manage to find a seat in the gang after they'd test him out on a very botched job. Afterwards, we would be introduced to Faraday, the man who provides jobs to the gangs and provides payment, who would scold Maine for allowing the job to go wrong and to go again to get this corporate data. Alright, episode 4 is David exercising, meeting some of the other gang members, which one of them would die, with David taking his first kill and paying revenge to his new friend who fell. In the next episode, David would be in a better mood after getting much closer to Lucy, and would end up kidnapping a target of theirs, a corporate executive of Osaka, one that happens to know David. Episode 6, we're done with this corporate executive. David's job is to keep him under sedatives. Lucy would be going through his mind and enhancements, digging through data, digging up files and memories. Many of the recent ones oddly focusing on David and how he has a tolerance for cyberware. In this fear, Lucy deletes all the files and kills the executive as a means to save David from his fate. This would mark the end, as his mentor, Maine, would end up falling for cyberpsychosis and dying from a tactical squad, in which then we'd be hit with a time jump. After this time jump, David is now leader of the gang, living in a big home with Lucy, all chromed up with a bigger body. Lucy, currently, has been absent from crew and gang activities, trying to deal with Osaka, who currently has David in their sights for experimentation. In the next episode, we find out that David dealt with a job, which would end with one woman dead and him seeing the photo of her son. This would trigger something, the first signs of cyberpsychosis. As David suffers his first signs of cyberpsychosis, he gains a bit more attention from Lucy, and we learn more of her backstory, in which she worked as a very good hacker for Arasaka, but would soon run away for her own safety. Shortly after this, Lucy would be kidnapped by Faraday. Faraday, meanwhile, has been working with Arasaka and trying to help get David into an experiment of theirs. Soon, David would take a job from Faraday, which would be a setup. This setup would involve David and his current crew being completely surrounded by a massive PMC armada, with his gang's life now threatened and the life of Lucy, which he now knows is being threatened by Faraday. He would enter the experiment Arasaka wished him to do. He would end up using an augment known as the Cyber Skeleton. This massive suit was meant to be a one-man army, but with how advanced it would drive users mad within minutes. But in David's case, hours. He would make use of this, though, tearing a path through Night City as he stored vengeance in hell, eventually saving Lucy, but he would redeem himself and die. Die saving his gang. Die as a legend of Night City. Die as an edge runner.
So David here seems like your average drifter, but this boy's smart. During his time at Arasaka Academy, he shows this by getting straight A's despite the trust fund kids not really liking his presence there. He also shows an extremely abnormal tolerance to cyberware. This man gets chromed up and blows it off like it's nothing. The gear he uses would put your average person into the padded hotel room within 4 uses, but he does it repetitively. This is shown especially towards the end of the series when he uses an experimental mech suit that would turn any normal person into jelly the second they hopped into it, but he's just different.
The whole motives of David Martinez are his need to prove himself, his connection with Lucy, his confidence, and his humanity. His humanity and curiosity caused the Arasaka executive to wake up, which resulted in the deaths of Maine and his elemental figure. His need to prove himself and his connection with Lucy is what put him in the gang in the first place, and resulted in him entering the cyber skeleton at the end of the series. All of his humanity and mind tested as cyberpsychosis slowly seeped into his mind and body.
So David's got a lot of issues that he cannot control, which eventually leads to his downfall and other unfortunate stuff. But the first major event is his mom getting killed. Basically, caught on the wrong side of I-10, bad area, end up in the crossfire between a group of street pirates and their target. Also, our boy likes to stick it to the man, which has caused him to have the biggest mega corporation after him, Arasaka, who have had their eyes on him since they found out he was able to handle the technology they stole from his dead mom's body. Just to add more to the mix, the girl that David decides to get with, Lucy, brings on some extra baggage. She's actually wanted by Arasaka herself. That wasn't on the Tinder profile, but David rolls with it anyways. Lastly, David also starts to suffer from cyberpsychosis like his mentor. This is due to a mixture of his copious amounts of cyberware and some trauma he got from sending someone's mom to the pearly gates through express shipping.
Alright, and now to put a final note in this, the audience reaction of the death of David Martinez. My reaction as well, more specifically. When it came to the death of David Martinez, it was expected. It was defined, destined. Yet we felt saddened by it. He deserved it as a consequence of not only his profession, but also of just bad luck. David could have had a good life. and lived with Lucy in peace. But he never took it. It is foreshadowed, has been in this series, that with all the death around him of his former members, that Edgerun was never die of old age. Maine, Pilor, Dorio, Rebecca, and Kiwi's deaths should have been enough for him to know that he would die if he kept going. And he did. His drive to enhance himself was countered by his humanity. It was only a matter of time before his chrome would turn against his mind. And even though it made us sad, we knew his ignorance and ambition would be his end. He became a legend in Night City, for you see, to quote Lucy, "You don't make a name as a cyberpunk by how you live. You're remembered by how you died." His final breath was his swan song. He redeemed himself through it. And I always remember the characters and their stories in Night City, and especially David Martinez.